How's it going, everyone? Trevor here, as always. Welcome to the November Whiskey Club subscription virtual tasting. As always, Trevor Tyler, Beverage Director for Eureka. Today I'm joined by James from Law's Whiskey House. I'll give James a chance to introduce himself here shortly. Just wanted to go over kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So James is the barrel manager for Law's Whiskey House out of Denver, Colorado. So he'll be telling us all about his job, looking over the barrels, tasting barrels, and how those are selected. We'll kind of talk about just what Law's does and what makes them unique, kind of how they've navigated their business through COVID. We'll talk about some of their unique methods that they use over there. We'll taste the whiskey, obviously. We'll talk about the cocktail. We have 2 barrels to taste today, so I'm going to be tasting barrel 473. James is going to be tasting barrel 469. Then we'll kind of get your the audience feedback, some tasting notes that you get as well. And yeah, as always, we'll just kind of have an organic conversation about whiskey, and that's why everyone's here, is because I love whiskey. James loves whiskey. You love whiskey. So James, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been with Law's, and
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my name is James Kunz. I'm the barrel manager here at Law's Whiskey House. Been here for just over 5 years. Prior to working here, I was working in the brewing industry in Denver, and made the switch because I love whiskey, and I saw a great opportunity to work for an awesome company. So,
can you say what brewery you were at before or no?
Yeah, Prost Brewing Company. So
nice.
Went from making German lager beer to making American style whiskeys, which are pretty much polar opposites, but they're both grain based. So there's definitely some overlap there.
That's great. And you said you've been there for about 6 years now, huh?
Yeah, just under 6 years. Yeah.
And did you have you always been the barrel master there? You kind of work your way up, or?
So started as a distiller. At the time, there were 4 distillers, and so I was in the distillery for about 4 years, 4.5 years, and then the opportunity opened up to work my way into the barrel house, and it's actually pretty nice. I'm the only one who oversees the aging of our barrels, the selection of the barrels, the batch creation, all the marriage of our batches, all that stuff, and so I have really probably, I think, the funnest job in production. And so when I make those selections, then I hand it off to packaging and they take it from there.
That's great. Well, tell us a little bit about Law's just in general, as far as when the distillery started, maybe a little about why the owners decided to open up a distillery in Denver. And, I don't think when people think whiskey making that Colorado is the first region in the United States that come to mind. What was the reasoning for wanting to open in Colorado? And about a little bit of history about Law's.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we are pretty far away from Kentucky and Scotland, so you're right. Colorado isn't always known for making whiskey, but we have a fantastic distillery up the road. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Stranahan's. We consider them our peers in the industry, and they've sort of paved the way for us, along with Leopold Brothers Distillery in Denver. And so we're very proud to call them our peers in the industry, and they've taught us a lot, and we've got a great symbiotic relationship with them. But anyway, going back to the beginning of Law's, started in 2011 with Alan and Marianne Laws. Al worked in the finance industry and oil and gas before that, and he had a lifelong passion for whiskey. Since he was 16 years old, he started collecting whiskey, and a lot of people laugh about that, but he grew up in Canada where drinking whiskey is a little different. So he's had quite a passion for whiskey for a long time, and he's a collector of whiskeys, and so he decided to open a distillery, and he became friends with a guy named Bill Friel, who's a Kentucky master distiller, who was inducted into the Bourbon Hall of Fame in Kentucky. One of a handful of people that have that title, and we call him our Yoda, because he's kind of our master master teacher, and really much of the law's flavor and process.
Green and hairy too, or
sorry,
is he short, green, and hairy too, or?
Yeah, no, he's very old though, and wise. So
probably the better characteristics of Yoda had to have than the ones that I
yeah. So it's sort of where our roots lie with learning production and everything. So sort of one by one, Al added distillers to the company, and they were this was before I came around, but they made whiskey for 3 years solid without selling a single bottle of it. None of our product is sourced, never has been. It never will be. We're very much, I'm sure you've heard the term grain to glass. Other companies use that term as well, but that's in our DNA. It's really what we believe in. So we have a really strong connection to the farmers and producers of our grain being locally grown here in San Luis Valley and in down southwestern Colorado. And then our corn comes from eastern Colorado. So locally produced and malted grains. And that's as well is pretty integral into our flavor and company message and branding and identity and all that stuff. So
cool. So I wanted to talk about. Sorry, I'm just trying to get some chats going on here, but I wanted to have you maybe elaborate. I mean, I think obviously we're based in California. When people hear the word San Luis, they think of a town in Central California called San Luis Obispo, and I know that has nothing to do with the San Luis Valley. You want to tell us where the San Luis Valley is in Colorado, and kind of why you guys chose to source your ingredients from that valley, and just kind of what makes that rye unique? Because it's beautiful. I mean, some of the flavor profiles I get off this rye whiskey are really special in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah. San Luis Valley in Colorado is southwestern Colorado. Geographically, it's in a huge prehistoric ancient lake bed that's full of really fertile soil, particularly in the southern part of the valley, which is where our grain is grown by Cody Family Farm. The Cody family has been farming grain in that area for generations. They used to grow barley for Coors, and a few years back, a couple of the brothers decided to start malting grain just for fun, to kind of add value to what would otherwise be a commodity grain. And then they diversified from there, and Al started buying initially malted wheat from them, and then rye and malted barley as well. And it sort of became this great relationship with the farmers, and now it's absolutely part of our product. It's inseparable, and really our flavor comes from San Luis Valley, and it's a pretty unique region geographically, and the weather is pretty unique. It's really harsh weather in the winter. It's very cold. The summer, it's pretty hot during the day, and they have cool nights, kind of similar to like grape growing regions in California. Makes for a really excellent grain, particularly the rye. But that harsh winter, sorry?
Does the harsh winter like kill the crops? Like, do they not produce during those times, or is the crops
So they actually plant rye and wheat in the fall, and in order for the grain to produce in the summertime, and it has to vernalize over the winter. So it actually sprouts in the fall, and will actually grow on sunny days.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term.
The vernalization?
Yeah.
Yeah. So not all grain does this, but the grains that they grow and malt on the farm, it makes for a really hardy grain. Rye in particular is a very durable grain. It's so durable that we run it through our hammer mill, and we actually run all of our grains through a hammer mill, but it's such a strong, durable grain. It holds tons of flavor, and it's actually kind of a beast to deal with, but that's probably the most unique grain that we buy from them. There's a 2-row barley that's, I believe it's of Scottish descent, and the wheat is a Colorado soft white wheat. So
Yeah, do you guys have problems? I mean, so you have to mill the grain a lot heavier because of how hardy it is. I know with brewing, sometimes using rye can be proven difficult, like with like a stuck mash tun or anything like that. Do you guys have any, obviously brewing and distilling, as you know, coming from the beer industry to the distilling industry, pretty similar processes up till, fermentation, and obviously whiskey goes into maturation. But like, do you have issues with this rye with that, or?
Rye, gosh, every time we make it, it's a little bit different, but this particular type of rye is very sticky. It's very heavy on the protein. Like you said, like brewers tend to have difficulty with it. Fortunately, we don't lauter the wort off of our grain, off of our mash for fermentation. So it's a full on grain mash fermentation, open top, sour, the whole works. So we don't have to worry too much about separating the wort off the mash, fortunately. But it still is kind of a beast to deal with because it's so sticky. It's heavy in protein. It carries a lot of oils with it, which can cause some issues in the still later on. We've learned so much from this grain because it gums up the works. And so we've actually had to change some of our processes just generally in the distillery because of this grain. It being so sticky. We added a couple extra enzymes into the mash just to loosen things up and make it a little more easy to deal with, to pump from one vessel to another and stuff like that. So, but with all that protein and oil comes tons of flavor. So that's something that we really shoot for. And we use the word terroir. I know that word is thrown around a lot in the wine industry and stuff like that. But it's not something that we take lightly because we're really trying to preserve the flavor of the earth and the region where it comes from. So
it's a fun word to say too.
Terroir.
Yeah. I have are you familiar with Jester King Brewery out of Austin, Texas?
Yeah, absolutely.
They had a shirt a few years ago that says Terroirists. It was like their softball team name. But I learned that people don't think it says Terroirists when I walk around town. They literally think I'm wearing a shirt that says terrorists. So it's more of a house shirt these days than a wearing public shirt. But
yeah, maybe that's for beer festivals or something like that.
Yeah, where people will recognize it exactly. But I mean, terroir is so important in especially in viticulture. That's so interesting to hear that it affects the grain as well. That distillers are using. And are you sourcing all your grain from the Cody family farm?
So the wheat, rye, and barley come from Cody family farm. It's grown on their farm. They have outsourced some of the growth to neighboring farms, but all of the grain goes through Colorado Malting Company, which is on the property, and that's run by the Cody family. So we buy a mixture of both raw grain and malted grain. But all of it goes through the malt house at the very least for cleaning and packaging. But the malt goes through the entire malting process.
It has what effect has COVID had on the grain production, if any, or just on Law's whiskey house in general?
So as far as the farm goes and their production at the malt house, as far as I know, they're pretty good. It's fairly isolated geographically. They're 12 miles outside of the town of Alamosa. And most of the production is run by two of the brothers and the dad of the family. They have a few hands that they hire here and there to help process in the malt house and packaging and getting orders out, stuff like that. As far as I know, everybody's okay there. And I do know that orders are down because, breweries are ordering less grain and the bulk of their malt goes to breweries. But as far as COVID affecting Laws, we're doing okay. We've actually increased production from the distillery. We had an expansion earlier in the year that actually weirdly coincided with COVID hitting. We increased production in the distillery, got a new boiler, a new chiller. We increased our fermentation capacity. So we're able to put out more spirit with almost, the same size still and mash cooker, and we'll be adding to that later this year, or rather early next year. So everybody's healthy here, and we're feeling good. Demand is still up for whiskey. I mean, people love to buy a bottle of whiskey and drink it at home. Really doesn't matter the season. I mean, you can make a fantastic cocktail in the winter to warm you up by the fire. You can make a fantastic cocktail in the summer and sit out with your little umbrella and your tiki drink and enjoy yourself. So I think it's really not, it's not dependent on the season so much, but we're sad that our friends in the bar and restaurant industry are suffering for sure. And I mean, a huge part of what we do is, as far as getting the message out about laws and getting people to try our product, is at bars and, being on cocktail lists. So we've tried to work with them as much as we can as far as to-go cocktails at various bars and stuff like that. But, everybody's feeling it in different ways, but all things considered, I think we're doing pretty well.
It's good to hear. You mentioned something about seasons. We don't have those in California, so
yeah. LA is nice all year.
It's cold right now, and it's probably about 55, 60 degrees outside.
Yeah, that's great.
I know most people that's not cold. Cool. So you guys do one of the the processes that you do at Laws is something called the Solera method, and I'm familiar with that method for wine, and even certain breweries do it with the brewery out of Orange County that uses a Solera method for their anniversary ales every year. But you want to tell us what the Solera method is and exactly how Laws utilizes that method in their whiskey making process?
Yeah. So it is different from how a winemaker would understand Solera. We don't employ Solera in fermentation, but rather in batch creation. And this mostly applies to two products, and that's our 4-grain bourbon, the batch 4-grain. And so just a basic rundown of how I do it. This process was created before me, so I can't take credit for it. But what we do is we take all the barrels that are going into a batch, and my biggest tank can hold 44 barrels. And then I take 500 gallons from a previous batch and marry that together. So recirculate it with a pump, get it nice and mixed up, take out 500 gallons from that for the next batch. And the whole idea behind that for us is continuity from batch to batch. So batch A to batch B has some continuity, batch A to batch B, batch C. Those lines are not so distinct, but going from batch A to batch Z, you're going to see some drift in character of our whiskey. So does that make sense? I mean, it's different from how a winemaker would do it, but I would say it's kind of a modified or sort of a simplified Solera system. And then a product that we're really excited about that's not on the shelves yet is our cognac finished bourbon. So we've got, I want to say about 11 or 12 large cognac barrels. They're between 350 and 400 liters. We fill those with 2-year-old bourbon, let it mature for a year. And then we take all of those barrels and we have a 60 hectoliter foeder, which is essentially, for those who aren't familiar with foeders, it's a huge barrel that can hold, my foeder can hold 30 whiskey barrels. And so
you don't have to brag about the size of your foeder.
Yeah. What we're doing is taking seasonal production, putting it into larger barrels to pick up the French oak flavor and the character of the cognac, letting it rest and mature, and then marrying those barrels together in a larger cognac vessel, also made of French oak, also having held cognac for over 50 years, and letting those flavors marry together. And then we'll take half of that volume off, cut it to proof, bottle it, and then half that volume is going to stay in that foeder, and we're going to add the next batch on top of it. So it's sort of a rolling system, and really we're taking a note from cognac cognac makers, because that's what they do. They do a much more involved process, and if your product is going to be, anywhere from 12, 15 to 25 or 40 years old, they're going to be marrying barrels and batches together over time and rebarreling them, and we're not nearly getting that complicated with this. But the idea is some continuity and some sort of I don't know, maybe like unique character for that particular product.
And when does that cognac, it's the 4-grain bourbon that they're using, when does that get released?
It should be, I believe it's winter next year, either 2021 or 2022. So I want to say it's around the holidays next year. And
Whiskey Club December 2021, maybe, huh?
Yeah. And I don't quote me on this, but I think it's going to be available in out-of-state markets, so you guys might get some.
Oh, cool. How long? Now you guys are you've only had distribution outside of, well, at least in California, what now, for 6 months, less than that, or maybe
I believe so. I believe we're maybe about a year is with our current distributor. So yeah, and we're in probably 20 other states outside of Colorado.
Great. It was awesome when we opened our Boulder location, is when I was introduced to you guys, and I think we carried like 4 or 5 different whiskeys from you there. And when I saw you guys were here in California, I got really excited. So big fan of your guys' stuff for sure.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, I'm excited too, because I have friends out in California, so I can tell them to go buy our stuff.
Nice. Cool. I think now we're going to bring, before we make our cocktail of the month, we were going to bring in Ian from Stem Cider. You there, Ian? Hey, what's going on? Can you hear us, Ian?
Yeah, I got you now. Hey, how's it going, Trevor?
We're good. We're good. So, Ian, obviously you guys are based out of Colorado as well. You're out of Denver or you're out of Boulder?
We're out of Denver. We started in Denver in a tap room downtown, and then we expanded to a restaurant and production facility in Lafayette, which is just due east of Boulder.
Nice. So you want to just tell us a little bit about Stem Cider? What's your guys's, how you guys started, what type of apples you're using, and maybe talk a little bit about the lavender cider that we're using in our Lavender Dreams cocktail for the month.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Stem was established back in 2013. Like I said, we had a small tap room production facility in downtown Denver in the Rhino neighborhood, and cranked out cider out of downtown Denver for a few years. And then in 2018, we purchased 8 acres on a hilltop in Lafayette. We built a restaurant and production facility. We have a farm-to-table wood-fired restaurant. We have a 3-acre farm that we grow almost all the vegetables for the restaurant right on site, and increased production probably about 3-fold. And yeah, we've been cranking cider out of Lafayette for the last 2 years.
Got it.
And I've been with them for about 5 years. So most of our apples come from the Pacific Northwest. Going to the Lavender cider. Lavender cider is one of our kind of core brand ciders, and most of our core brand ciders, our apples come from Washington State. They got apples for days. We make a couple other smaller, like small batch ciders that we can get Colorado apples for, but those are few and far between. As you might not know, growing apples in Colorado is risky business, to say the least. They're a pretty fragile crop. Colorado, we have early spring freezes, and apple blossoms tend to blossom pretty early in the season. And when they blossom and we drop below 30 degrees overnight in, say, April or May, that pretty much wipes out the blossoms. So a more steady, kind of sturdy climate like in Washington, or even in like the upper East Coast, is more it's better climate to grow apples in. So most of our apples come from Washington.
One of the things I maybe our subscribers do know this, but I find that a lot of the time people think that cider is just made from like the apples you buy at your grocery store, or a variety of apples you can buy at your grocery. Like, what can you talk about the difference between like apples that are used to make cider versus apples that you buy at, your local market or your grocery store?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, everything you're going to buy as an eating apple or a culinary apple, as we call them, they're going to be high in sugar because we like to eat, sweet apples, and they're going to be either high or low in acid. What they're going to be low in is tannins. Just like wine, apples have tannins, and the tannins are really what provide a lot of flavor when you're fermenting these apples. So culinary apples, Honeycrisp, Red Delicious, Fuji's, all of those apples, you can make cider with them, but it's going to be a kind of an uninteresting cider. The thing about cider, hard cider, is that there's only really kind of like 3 flavor inputs from the actual apple, and it's acid, sugar, and tannins. And so cider specific apples are pretty high in tannins, and they're pretty high in acid, and they may be high or low in sugar. It depends. But an apple you want to eat is going to be high in sugar, and it's going to be high or low in acid, and there's going to be no tannins. So that's kind of like the line of delineation between cider apples and culinary apples. And cider apples is very hard to get because an orchard just can't make a ton of money growing an apple that back in the colonial days they used to call Ciders, because you take a bite out of it in the orchard and you spit it right out because it's all tannin, it's all bitter, there's not a lot of sugar, spit it right out. But if you juice that apple and ferment that, you're going to make pretty damn good cider. So cider apples are pretty difficult to get. You can still get them. But for the most part, culinary apples that you buy in the store, they're not going to make a great cider. They'll get the job done, but it's not going to be amazing.
Yeah, the lavender cider is delicious. But if any of our subscribers haven't had Stem, definitely try the lavender one that came with your box. But the chili guava cider that you guys make, is to die for. Like, I could.
That was really an ambitious kind of mission for me personally. Actually, we have we have a firkin program at the tap room and up at acreage at the restaurant. Yeah, so that cider actually started as a firkin. I made like a super spicy pepper spray kind of tea and blended it with some cider and some guava. That's a love-hate kind of cider. I have a lot of people that can't drink it because they say it's too spicy, and then I have a lot of people that like get upset when it goes away off the shelves for a while. But
my mother-in-law couldn't drink it. She doesn't like spicy things.
Yeah, my mom couldn't drink it either.
I think I gave my mother-in-law some salsa because we live in East LA, and we buy locally made salsa, and I didn't think it was spicy, and she was like, "Oh my God, this is the spiciest thing I've ever had." So love her to death, but I don't think she could handle that. So before we move on, Ian, why lavender? I mean, it's absolutely delicious, but what was the thought behind making a lavender cider? It's just something that I haven't seen. I know you guys do cool and interesting flavors, but what was the thought behind the lavender?
Honestly, the lavender was just kind of, it probably started, the lavender cider itself started about 3.5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And we did a small batch in the tap room down in Denver. And really, actually, a lot of people aren't really too aware that there's a lot of local lavender fields here on the Front Range in Colorado. And we got a hold of some pretty local lavender that was pretty fresh, and we made just a small kind of like couple kegs worth batch of this lavender cider. And me and everybody else at Stem, we're kind of like hard cider nerds, so we kind of like very specific like apple based ciders, and this was a cider that we didn't really like. We were like, oh well, yeah, it tastes like lavender. kind of reminds me of my great aunt's soap in her spare bedroom. Like, we don't really like it, but we made a batch, put it on tap, and man, people went crazy. And it's kind of interesting. It was a cider that just us personally, we weren't big fans of, but everybody else, customer-wise, that tasted it went crazy for. So, and back then it was bone dry. It was a little over lavender. So, we kind of fought the lavender cider battle for a while, just because we weren't huge fans. But man, those fans, they would not go away. They would not go away. So I started developing it maybe probably a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, kind of tweaking it, added a little sweetness. It's an off-dry cider. I backed down the lavender a little bit, so it's not quite as soapy. And put it
really
in and out. Yeah, thank you.
Lavender cider, but it's delicious. It's very well balanced.
Yeah, I mean the original batch was almost like you got caught saying a cuss word by your aunt, and she shoved that lavender bar of soap in your mouth to teach you a lesson. So it's come a long way, and I'm proud of it. I'm happy with it. I'm drinking it right now. But it's been an adventure with the lavender cider. Yeah, cheers, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm just old enough to still be part of that generation where my mom made me put a bar of soap in my mouth when I came home from school with a bad note from the teacher.
Exactly.
But I wish my mom would have given me this instead, because
yeah, I'd take that over bar of soap any day. Yeah.
All right, Ian. Well, I hope people check out Stem and enjoy the lavender cider. We're gonna say goodbye to you and thank you for your time, and we're gonna make a cocktail.
All right. Cheers. Yeah.
Right.
Thanks, Trevor.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian.
All right. So we're going to make our Lavender Dreams cocktail here. I fresh squeezed my lemon juice earlier and made my lavender simple syrup. So you may use just granulated sugar at home. I use like a Demerara sugar, just a little bit more richness and flavor. But really simple cocktail. We're going to add 1/2 ounce of our lavender simple syrup, 1/2 ounce of fresh squeezed lemon juice. So remember, fresh squeeze is always the best. We're going to add 1 1/4 ounces of our Laws San Luis Valley Rye. I'm using the 473 barrel pick.
It looks like you've had a few glasses of that.
I did.
I mean, not tonight, but from that bottle.
So I picked this up last week when everyone else picked up their bottles, and my wife and I are having a baby in a couple months. So we had like this baby moon thing that people do nowadays in Palm Springs, and one of the nights at the hotel we were watching TV, and I was like, I can have a pour or two. It'll be okay. So thanks for calling me out, James. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh no, you've been enjoying it, so that's good.
I'm sure many of our members have enjoyed a little bit already as well. So 1.25 ounces of that. Then we're just going to grab some ice. Give that a good shake. Grab my strainer. Is that my strainer right here? Hold on. Seems like I always. There we go. It's in the box. Strain that out. Oops, you know what? I forgot something. We're going to take our bourbon sugar. So everyone should have got their whiskey barrel bourbon sugar. We're gonna rim the glass with that.
That stuff is so good. I've never tasted smoked sugar, but maybe I'm late to the game or something. But it's fantastic.
I like to do like a healthy little rim on just one section of the glass. That way I can, not every sip has the sugar on it. Oops. Let's add a little more ice here. And we're gonna top with our Stem Lavender Cider. All right. Nice little rim of the bourbon sugar, some carbonation.
Yours looks better than mine.
Oh, so delicious. Those are dangerous.
Yeah.
I feel like I could drink about 5 of these and not even realize I'm drinking. All right. Well, hopefully you were able to follow along at home and make that. If not, try to make that cocktail at some point. I highly recommend it. What do you think?
That's delicious. I like the smoked sugar definitely comes through, and the like you were saying, the lavender is definitely not too soapy. It's actually spot on. It's really nice.
Yeah, it complements the floral notes of the rye a lot.
Yeah.
I like it.
So when did you come up with this cocktail?
To be completely honest with you, this was something that Stem sent over to me, and I made some slight tweaks to it. I think originally they had it just as a regular simple syrup, and I was like, we're putting lavender cider in this. Let's make a lavender simple syrup. And then in a classic fashion, I added more whiskey to it. So it was a collaboration between myself and Stem. They kind of sent over the base recipe, and I made my little tweaks to it. So more whiskey, more lavender. I guess I always like to push it a little bit.
Yeah.
You want to say it.
It's delicious.
Thank you. Cool. So we got a few more questions here for you, James.
Yeah, fire away.
You're the barrel manager for, I know you kind of touched a little bit on it, but seeing as you manage the barrels, like where are you guys sourcing your barrels from? And like what level char are you guys using on your barrels? So on and so forth. Just talk to us a little bit about what barrels you use and why you guys use those specific barrels.
Yeah, definitely. So the vast majority of our barrels come from Independent Stave Company, and that's in their cooperage is in Lebanon, Missouri. They also have a cooperage in Lebanon, Kentucky, but our particular barrels come from Missouri. We use full-size 53-gallon barrels, as you can see behind me, char level 3, and that's simply because that's going to give you the roundest flavored whiskey. It's going to
alligator char. Is that the same thing?
Yep, alligator char. So anything above a maybe char level 1 is going to give you that alligator sort of looking pattern on the inside of the inside of the staves. And so that's the layer of char, and then beneath that is the I guess what would be sort of toasted wood. So, they go up to a char level 5 at Independent Stave. A lot of other cooperages do that too. But by and large, most whiskey producers prefer the level 3 just because it gives you the roundest flavor. It's not going to cover up too much with too heavy of a char. It's not going to cover up the grain flavor. And with really light char, you're not going to taste the barrel. It's going to taste a little more like raw wood, kind of like sawdust, sort of things like that. So it's just the good balance. You get the nice vanilla and chocolate tones, stuff like that. That's going to come out in your whiskey.
So you talked about obviously terroir and hot nights cold nights and hot days. how does the Colorado weather affect the barrels? Are you keeping, or do you temperature regulate your rick houses yourself, or is that do you rely on the outside elements?
Yeah, so it is somewhat climate controlled in here. We keep it between 70 and 80 degrees. If you go much below, maybe into below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe into the mid 50s, the whiskey is not really going to interact with the wood very much. If you go to rick houses in Kentucky, it gets pretty cold in Kentucky in the winter. Your whiskey is essentially not interacting with the barrel once it gets cold. So we keep it, right now it's at about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and I want to say probably 20 to 25% humidity. The humidity is definitely going to fluctuate throughout the year. And we don't get above 80 degrees in the summertime. We have swamp coolers here, which I know is foreign to people in a humid climate, but it's so dry here that evaporative cooling is actually really beneficial for us. But the seasonal changes of temperature specifically, as well as barometric pressure swings every day, sometimes even by the hour, makes the whiskey work its way in and out of the wood. And we like to say that the barrel beats like a heart. And so the whiskey is coming in and out of the wood as the pressure changes. And if you think of the barrel as, I know it's kind of silly, but like a single-celled organism, and the barrel, the wood of the barrel itself is like a cell membrane, the inside and the outside wanting to reach equilibrium. Pressure swing. The barrel's not 100% sealed from the outside environment. It's watertight, but with a pressure swing, the inside pressure is going to correct over time to reach that equilibrium, and with temperature as well. So with those fluctuations of temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, we get the whiskey working in and out of the wood, and kind of at an accelerated rate as compared to a place like Kentucky.
Nice. So you want to taste the whiskey?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So our members either received a bottle of barrel 473 or barrel 469. I'm tasting 473. James is tasting 469. Let's go in chronological order. So you want to go first, James?
Yeah, I'll go first. So barrel 469, the tasting notes that we sent with this particular barrel, or was picked rather, we have notes of geranium on the nose, fig, mint on the palate. Has a little bit of a salted chocolate sort of note. This product of ours, the San Luis Valley Rye, generally to me has a lot of orange notes. It's spicy, it's earthy. I think those are some common threads that really run throughout all of our ryes.
One of the things that I found unique about more so 469 than 473, I get a little bit on both, is that in the beer world we would refer to it as horse blanket. Beer or wine, it would be like horse blanket. Now, does that come from the rye grain? It's like, I saw that the Cody family referred to it as like a semi-wild rye. I maybe it's just my palate picks it up, but I get like this very unique like barnyard characteristic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. I would say that comes from two places. That's from the grain itself being a really earthy grain, and tasting like the earth itself, and as well as the wild fermentation. And so we have a mixed culture fermentation. We pitch distiller's yeast in the fermenter, but it's an open top fermentation. So we're inviting in microbes from the local environment, and that obviously changes seasonally as it would with any wild fermented beer or wine.
Yeah.
So Brettanomyces yeast, there are numerous strains of that exists in the air and on everything, as well as Lactobacillus, Pediococcus, wild bacteria. And we do a 3-day ferment that's pretty hot and fast. We get a ton of flavor out of it. So the distiller's yeast is doing the bulk of the fermentation as far as alcohol production and ester production, as well as the wild yeast and bacteria giving you those nice, and like you said, barnyardy sort of characteristics. You get some nice fruit flavors and aromas from that. And without that acid production, you're not going to get the beautiful esters that you get in distillation. So without going too in depth on it, esters are something that make beer and wine and spirits really interesting. You get a combination of an acid and an alcohol together, and with more acids, you get more esters, and that happens in the fermenter. It happens after distillation. It happens in the barrel. But yeah, that barnyardy character is definitely something that runs throughout all of our ryes.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Like, that to me was when you guys sent me barrels to choose from. The 4 grain is delicious. Don't get me wrong, but when I tasted the ryes and I started picking up that, like, almost like Brettanomyces characteristics in the whiskey, I was very intrigued to say the least. And I was like, I had to, like, I was kind of like questioning my palate for a second. I was like, why am I picking this up, tasting this whiskey? Like, this isn't normally something I would pick up. And I just, especially in 469, I get it in 473 as well, but in the 469, I definitely get more of that barnyard funk is what we'd like to, or at least is what I like to refer to it as, which I love. It adds such a complexity and just another flavor profile. So
yeah, definitely. And with open top fermentation, mixed culture fermentation like that, every ferment is going to be different. So you're rolling the dice. Occasionally a ferment goes wrong and we have issues with it. So we have to burn it early, and we'll usually still get some nice characteristics out of it. But every distillation is going to yield something slightly different. And that's why distillers blend across, multiple distillations or even ages to get consistency. But with a rye, we're definitely looking for sort of unique seasonal sort of characteristics.
Yeah, and if anybody else wants to comment on, your tasting notes in the comments section, let us know what you're tasting. We'd love to hear from you. Everyone's palate's different. You may be picking up things that James and myself can't pick up, or hopefully we're saying some things that you notice, or we're saying some things and you're like, I don't know what the hell these guys are talking about. I don't get that at all. But everyone's palate's different. That's what this subscription program is all about. It's about expanding your horizons about whiskey, learning about whiskey, tasting different styles, and just loving whiskey. So, James, go ahead. I don't know if you had any. I maybe hijacked that with the barnyard comment. I don't know.
No, not at all.
Notes. Vicky says she smells orange and citrus. Vicky, and on the 469. So, did you have any other notes on the whiskey, James? I'm sorry.
No, I get orange for sure. I mean, orange peel, the bitter orange peel, is absolutely present in that. And like I said, it's something that is pretty prominent in the rye whiskey. And to be honest with you, I have no idea where it comes from, but it's there. And I really enjoy the sort of minty finish, which is definitely present in a lot of rye whiskeys. We really love that.
Yeah. Like I said, I was super excited when I found out that we could do a barrel pick with you guys. You guys are the first barrel pick that we've done since month 1 of this subscription program. I know our members have been very eager and voiced their desire for more barrel picks. So I'm really excited that we ended up doing this with you. I'll talk about 473 just for a second. So that's what I'm drinking here in my Law's whiskey glass that came with it. James, I want to know what the logo means after I talk about it. I'm curious on what this design is after we talk about this whiskey. So I definitely get some floral notes. I get more of rose petals on this barrel. I get the cinnamon, that orange oil is definitely there, and that peppermint on the nose. I do get some of that kind of barnyard funk. more so on the palate with this and less so on the nose. With the 469, I got it like boom right on the nose right away. That salted toffee flavor on the palate. This one, to me, was a little bit more caramel versus 469 is more like that salted dark chocolate. Orange blossom. With rye whiskeys, I think you can attest to this. Dill is often a characteristic. I do get a little bit of dill on this, some fig as well, and then some green peppercorn at the very end. Some like almost that vegetable characteristic.
Yep.
But yeah, two amazing whiskeys. I think they're unique in their own right, and I know some of the members are wish they could have got both of them, but hopefully you're happy with the one you got in your basket, and hopefully you don't drink it too quick. You know, this is a Eureka barrel pick, so there's only one of this. There's not going to be another one. So maybe put this in I always keep the whiskeys I don't want to drink like in the top cupboard, where it's like I forget about them. I actually had I opened up my top cupboard tonight, and I was like, oh, I have a half bottle of Elmer T. Lee in there still.
Nice.
And I have to remind myself not to drink it. But yeah, this was super exciting. James, we're running close to the time limit here, but I did have just two more questions for you. One out of personal curiosity was, so when I first heard of Law's whiskey, it was called AD Law's whiskey, and now it's Law's Whiskey House. What was the AD? Was it Alan and someone else?
Yep, his name is Alan Douglas Laws.
Got it.
So, which was actually the first question I asked him when I got hired here. It's like, what's the AD? So, yeah, it changed from AD Laws to Law's Whiskey House. I mean, Law's Whiskey House is the company, but AD Laws was sort of the forward-facing brand of the product itself. And we went through a little bit of a rebranding probably about a year and a half ago. And the idea behind that was to make it more focused on what we call the village, because it's a team effort. We have, I want to say, around 30 or so people working here. And it was a conscious decision to take Al's name off the product, or at least his first initials off the product, and to make it more focused on the village of Law's Whiskey House. So that's part of the updated branding and updated labeling.
So before I forget, what is this logo on the bottom of the glass here?
Yeah, we call that the knot, the Law's knot. So some people think that it's a Celtic knot. It's not specifically a Celtic knot, but as far as I understand, the two vertical diamonds. Where is it? Oh, over here. The two vertical diamonds. If you think of a infinity symbol, it's sort of infinite repetition. And then the horizontal diamonds are process of making whiskey. So it represents the infinite repetition of our process, always getting better at what we do. We like to say that we're obsessed with whiskey around here, and I'd say that's pretty accurate because we talk about it all day, every day. And so it's that constant repetition of our process because we're obsessed with it. We love it. And, there is no perfect whiskey. We've never made a perfect barrel of whiskey. We can confidently say that the best whiskey that we've ever made was made today. Moving on into the future, we'll make even better whiskey in the future. So it's the whole process of getting better at our craft, probably never being perfect at it, but learning as we go.
Well, I'm biased, but I think 469 and 473 are the best whiskeys you've ever made.
Thank you. Yeah. And sort of a side note for barrel 473, that's a barrel that's near and dear to my heart because about a year ago, I started tasting barrels in that range of age, and barrel 471 was sitting on a rack right next to 473. And those two barrels really knocked my socks off. They were fantastic. They were unlike any of our other ryes that I've ever tasted. And moving forward, our rye is tasting even more and more like these. So I'm really happy that you guys got a hold of that barrel in particular. And we still have barrel 471, but I have plans for that one.
Got it. That's awesome, man. That's really cool. And that's glad to hear that we chose something that was, I'm sorry we had to steal it from you, but I'm glad you let it go.
No, I'm happy you guys got it. It's a really special barrel. It's fantastic.
Cool. And then I'll let our subscribers know that if you do have any questions for James, put them in the comments now. But I do have, we only have a couple minutes here. So I know you mentioned the cognac release, the cognac finished, the 4-grain bourbon cognac finished barrels that are coming out next year. Anything else you want to mention that Laws has coming out in the near future that our members should be keeping an eye out for?
We definitely are pushing our what we call the core 4 brands out of state, being our batch bourbon, our batch rye, bonded bourbon, and bonded rye. I don't know if we'll be doing any special releases out of state or in California. You can always come here to Denver and visit our tasting room. We've got all sorts of what we call the experiential series. I'm always really excited about this. And it's a lot of one-off barrels that are, wine barrel finishes. We've got Curacao finished wheat whiskey. Was so popular that it's probably going to be a seasonal release. We have we just released our first 8-year release, what we call Origins. That's only available here in Denver, but it's pretty excellent barrel. And it sort of has a whole story that goes along with kind of being in the early days of our production and kind of the roots of our production. So, but keep an eye out for experiential releases. Like I said, I don't know if and when those will come to California, but if you're here in Denver, we've always got 1 or 2 available in the tasting room. We've done Calvados barrel finishes. We've done, I'm really excited about a Curacao barrel rye whiskey that I just barreled a few days ago, and it already tastes fantastic. So,
well, from a tiki lover, I'm very excited to try a Curacao finished rye whiskey. Trust me.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, James, I want to say an extreme thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you for the past hour. Super honored that we could do a barrel pick with you guys, and look forward to working with you in the near future. Shout out to Ian as well from Stem Cider for joining us tonight to talk about the Lavender cider. Hopefully you can get a few more of those cocktails out of your bottle. And again, James, thank you so much, and really just a pleasure to speak with you this evening.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure and a privilege having our products in your whiskey club. It's really awesome.
Cool. Awesome. Have a good one, everyone. Appreciate you being a member, and look forward to next month's